Welcome to Chapter 6 of Fire and Emergency Services Instructor, which covers classroom instruction. Good instruction involves using many talents at the same time. If you really want to reach your students, you must first be a good interpersonal communicator and an effective public speaker. Cultivating these skills requires learning how to lecture effectively, use audiovisual aids, and transition between parts of a lesson. The first two learning objectives are discuss interpersonal communication and discuss the important elements of nonverbal communication in the classroom. Discuss means to talk or write about a topic in detail, taking into account different ideas and opinions. Interpersonal communication is the process by which people exchange information, feelings, and meanings through verbal and nonverbal messages. It is day-to-day, face-to-face communication, and it only works when both parties agree on the why, the purpose of the effort. The 5 general reasons to communicate are learning, relating, influencing, playing, or helping. There are also 4 characteristics or features and 5 basic elements or parts of interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is casual, spontaneous, verbal and nonverbal, and the roles change frequently. Interpersonal communication has a sender, a receiver, a message, feedback, and possible interference. On page 127 of the text, figure 6.1 models communication that an instructor may face in the classroom when attempting to relay messages. Instructors must understand the importance of the message and the feedback. All communication takes place within a larger frame of reference where the sender encodes the message based on their education and authority, and then the receiver decodes the message based on their own experience and knowledge. When the sender takes these characteristics into account, the receiver is more likely to understand the message clearly. Interference is anything that distracts or prevents the student from fully understanding the instructor message, or vice versa in the feedback loop. Failing to monitor feedback can interfere with a message. Figure 6.1 lists numerous causes of interference. Instructors need to watch for verbal cues from students indicating possible loss of interest, confusion, or distraction. While the words in a message only count for 7% of the communication, they carry the majority of the abstract meaning. The choice and use of words when teaching a new idea or process can be critical. The following concepts can be used to improve verbal communication skills. Dual perspective means being aware of the receiver's frame of reference. So you're aware of your frame of reference and the receiver's frame of reference. You need to know that their background includes diverse experience, education, and culture. You also need to take responsibility for your feelings and thoughts. You want to communicate from the first person frame of reference rather than the second person. For instance, think, I believe or I think, as opposed to you did this or that. You also need to show respect for the other person's feelings and thoughts. Avoid telling them, I know how you feel. Instead, say, wow, that must be rough. You need to be accurate and clear. Avoid using abstract language and generalizations that can result in stereotypes and misunderstanding. You need to measure twice and cut once. Check your facts, proofread everything, keep it short and to the point, and practice twice. Be aware of the student's special needs and make appropriate accommodations when necessary. Avoid speaking or addressing a problem while angry or emotional. Take a deep breath, count to 10, then respond instead of react. Review questions. On page 188 in the textbook, there are 14 review questions. Be prepared to discuss these in class. Remember, discuss is talk in detail, including different ideas and opinions than you find in the test. First review question, what are the 5 basic elements of interpersonal communication? Second review question, what are the guidelines for verbal communication skills? Good nonverbal communication has 3 elements: body language, vocal tone and volume, and personal appearance. These three consist of the following 10 components. Eye contact. Don't stare, instead glance at everyone from time to time by scanning the audience. Facial expression. If you're prepared, your face will show it. If you're not, it will show that. Gestures should emphasize and illustrate the message. Make sure your gestures support the lesson. Good posture indicates self-confidence. Your mother was right. Don't slouch. Stand up straight and tall. Poise. Be prepared but human. It's okay to make a mistake. Nobody's perfect. Just admit it and go on. Vocal characteristics. Speak slowly. Vary your pitch and volume to draw attention to special points. Vocal interferences like saying or ah will disappear if you're prepared. Personal appearance. Look your best, set an example, show how much you care. And touch. Be aware that people's personal boundaries vary, and when they allow you or want you to enter into their space, they'll let you know it. Proximity. Different cultures have different size boundaries. The more you know about the audience, the better you can use these guidelines. What are the 3 elements of nonverbal communication? Be prepared to discuss this in class. Discuss the practice of good listening skills in the classroom. Objective 3. Do you remember what your mother said? Are you listening to me? What did she mean? What's the difference between good listening and bad listening? Since listening is critical to higher learning, 75% of the time in class is spent listening, the instructor has to practice and model good active listening skills. Listening, unlike simple hearing, is an active process that includes 1. Attending to, which means focusing on the speaker while ignoring other distractions. 2. Understanding, which is decoding the message and assigning meaning. 3. Remembering, or retaining information short-term and long-term. Evaluating, critically analyzing information to determine if it's accurate and separating fact from fiction and opinion. Responding, indicating to the sender that the message has been understood or not. Focused practice is the best way to develop good listening skills. Another review question. How does an instructor use good listening skills in the classroom? When we discuss this in class, you can use your notes in the textbook. Objective 4. Explain presentation techniques that most effectively communicate information to students. Presentation is an art that uses the science of interpersonal communication and public speaking to clearly and concisely explain information and concepts well enough for the students to comprehend. The characteristics of an effective speaker are: be audience-centered. Learn as much as you can about your audience, then adapt your presentation to fit their style. Choose your words carefully. Use vocabulary aimed at the intellectual level and culture of your audience. You can use the Microsoft Synonym tool to experiment with different words until you find the one with just the right context. Good development and organization of ideas. Use relevant examples, stories, and metaphors to explain ideas. Organize your presentation so that it's easy for the audience to follow. Include an attention grabber and necessary background, illustrations and solutions, and arrange things systematically. You can use a chronological order, or least to most important, or least to most complex. Incorporate good delivery skills. Keep appropriate eye contact, speak to the entire audience, use applicable gestures, pause periodically to give students time to think and digest on ideas, refrain from too many war stories. Use good vocal characteristics. Practice using proper pronunciation, grammar, and a variety of inflection, projection, and rate of speech. Use a conversational tone. A relaxed tone puts listeners at ease and readies them to receive information. Keep a positive attitude. You have more credibility when you speak positively than negatively. Use an appropriate humor. When relevant and suitable, humor can create another relaxed atmosphere and get the attention of the audience. Be yourself. You can develop your personal style by capitalizing on your unique experience and abilities, which builds a relationship with the audience. Presentation generally has 3 parts. The military uses a system telling them 3 times. Number 1, tell them what you're going to tell them and include why they should listen. Number 2, tell them what you're telling them. And number 3, tell them what you told them, just in a little bit different way. The introduction explains the topic and the purpose of the presentation, usually including a brief summary or outline of the main points to help students focus. The body presents the information in a logical sequence of easy-to-remember segments. And finally, the conclusion reviews the objectives of the presentation and the relevance to the overall course. The sequence depends on the topic and the organization of the lesson plan. Generally accepted sequences for instructional delivery include known to unknown, which begins with information students are familiar with before leading them into unfamiliar or unknown material; simple to complex, which starts by teaching the basics before introducing the more difficult concepts or knowledge; the whole part whole sequence, which initiates with an overview of the entire topic, then divides the concepts into subsections or steps, and closes with a summary of the whole idea again; and finally, the step-by-step sequence, which teaches each individual step in the correct order and then has the students practice them in the same order. Transition allows students to understand how one part of a lesson relates to another. It helps them to build an intellectual framework. As an instructor, you should know when and how to effectively use transition. Transitions are needed when ending one topic and beginning another, ending a complete lesson within a course, starting a new lesson within a course, moving from one teaching method to another, and when providing rest breaks. Transition can be verbal or nonverbal. Some transitions alert students to change by summarizing or previewing parts of the lesson. Some words and phrases that can be used or transitions are in addition to, in other words, as well as, therefore, in summary, and not only. Nonverbal transitions include changing facial expression, changing your vocal pitch or rate of speaking, or using gestures or physically moving from one point to another. Be careful that a transition is not so blatant that it distracts students and interferes with learning. Another review question: what are the characteristics of effective speakers? Be prepared to discuss that in class. Learning Objective 5. Discuss characteristics of the mastery approach to teaching as it relates to the fire and emergency services. In the fire service, information and skills have to be mastered before students can progress to newer and higher levels. It does no one any good if a firefighter can only raise the ladder 70% to the building. We don't care how long a firefighter's been in class. We care if they perform the job. That concludes Part 1 of Chapter 6. Stay tuned for Part 2 and 3.